The following review has full spoilers for the whole of Pokemon Legends Arceus. The video has been broken down into timestamps below if you wish to watch it in parts. Please like and subscribe, if you want to do that. Pokemon Legends Arceus is a brave new venture from a series that still thinks a traditional turn-based RPG works in the modern day. The game opens with a very relatable depiction of a child reaching for their mobile telephonic device. A glowy figure emerges and ominously tasks the player with seeking out all of the Pokemon in the land. It's pretty apparent that this figure is the titular Arceus. Arceus? I don't know. Look, the fact is I know who the Pokemon is and what it looks like. Being unsure of whether or not it will be the next step in the mainline series, I couldn't help but have in the back of my mind whether to approach the game as a long-time fan with 25 years of Pokemon history baggage, or clean the slate and keep an open mind. Wanting to immerse myself in a wondrous fantasy world, I assumed the role of the player character, not knowing what an Arceus was, and subsequently not even knowing what seeking out the Pokemon of the land even means. As far as the story is concerned, it does a decent job of having an air of mystery surrounding the origins of the player character, and establishing Pokemon as a relatively new phenomenon. The residents of Jubilife Village seem genuinely fearful of Pokemon, and rightly so. Aside from wandering into tall grass without the accompaniment of a Pokemon, the Pokemon world has never really been fearful of Pokemon, even when legendaries are involved, and humans have always been portrayed as living harmoniously with Pokemon, a goal the Galaxy team is actually striving for in Legends Arceus. People walk around with literal beasts capable of catastrophic destruction, and everyone's just always been okay with it. It's a fresh take on the usual carefree atmosphere, and truly supplies a sense of reality and danger. So the premise of the story is that weird space-time rifts have started to open up in the sky, and they're believed to be the source of numerous problems. It just so happens that this is where you mysteriously come from as well. The professor of the village, Laventon, is wanted to conduct research on Pokemon to create the world's first Pokedex, and you just so happen to fall right into his lap to help him out. Which is convenient since your task from Arceus is to pretty much do the same thing. When being introduced to Jubilife Village, the residents, particularly those part of the Galaxy team, are wary of your mere existence and possible intentions. But as you're willing to become part of the team with the notion of helping out the village, no one can really judge you otherwise. That and everyone being seemingly clueless and afraid of Pokemon really works in your favour. After some world building and character building, the game unleashes you into the wilderness to mark yourself as a capable recruit of the Galaxy team. You're tasked with capturing a few Pokemon, being taught the capture mechanics and the general behaviours to expect. First up is a Bidoof, who are pretty aloof, so getting close enough to lock on and winging a ball at them is pretty straightforward. Starly, however, are a little bit more skittish and will flee if you startle them with your presence. Simply sneak around the tall grass and capture them without ever being spotted. Who's really the Pokemon here? You know what I'm saying? Off to a great start. For the sake of the tutorial, this method doesn't work on the last Pokemon you need, Shinx. Shinx become aggressive when they spot you, and when a Pokemon becomes hostile, they'll try to attack you out on the field, but more importantly, Pokeballs will not work. Thankfully, Akari has the perfect solution for dealing with aggressive Pokemon: battling. If a Pokemon is aggressive, you battle them. You attack them in a turn-based fashion until their health is low, before throwing a Pokeball at them to catch them. I wonder where I've seen this before. Barely 30 minutes into Legends Arceus, and the game has already thrown out any semblance of originality to stick with the safe, traditional Pokemon gameplay. All that setup, all that world building, all those new mechanics I was introduced to seconds ago. All of that just for it to ultimately come down to what we've been doing for the past 25 years. Is what I was afraid to think. Before we go any further, let's talk about the movement options in the game. The player doesn't walk around that quickly, and their sprint isn't much faster. There's also an invisible stamina meter to hinder your sprinting experience. There's absolutely no jumping, stressed by how eager the game is to inflict fall damage, and the amount of health you have is also somewhat invisible, indicated only by the border that appears on the screen when you take damage and its level of redness. This is completely fitting and works really well with the terrifying world Legends Arceus is trying to portray. Having minimal cues on your health and stamina, the former of which also impairs your vision somewhat, reinforces the idea that you are in a wilderness interacting with dangerous monsters who are straight up better than you. The only method to defend yourself on the field is a singular dodge roll to quickly dive out of the way of incoming attacks, or to simply attempt running away. The movement options are pretty basic and conducive to the theme of the game, but they don't feel particularly satisfying to pull off and sometimes just control poorly. Dodging feels quick with a decent range, but you're suddenly brought to a halt as you reach the end of the animation before being able to do another action. It's hard to explain, but the transition feels clunky compared to the likes of Zelda or Mario. The previously mentioned lock-on system also has its plethora of problems. There's a brief period after letting go of the ZL button to stop locking on, where trying to roll will sometimes cause you to roll toward whatever you had locked onto, rather than whichever direction you were holding. When you're faced with multiple Pokemon, the game will do a ghost lock-on to whichever Pokemon you were closest to first. If you get closer to a different Pokemon, but are still within lock-on range for the first, the game will still force you to lock onto that first Pokemon. The only way to switch is to accept locking onto the initial Pokemon and then pressing the A button to hopefully move over to the Pokemon that you wanted to lock onto. Look, if that sounded long-winded and convoluted, that's because it is. While confronting aggressive Pokemon with a battle is what the game teaches you, there are other ways to deal with aggressive Pokemon and ultimately avoid conflict. There are various items throughout the land such as spoiled acorns, mud balls and snowballs which can be used to stun angry Pokemon. After 1 to 5 hits, depending on the Pokemon, they'll be temporarily stunned, allowing for Pokeballs to work and a chance for capture. They're stunned for so long you've even got a chance to get a back shot, which increases the chance for capture. This is more of what I wanted to see from Legends Arceus. You, yourself, as a trainer, attempting to tame wild beasts of Hisui with nothing but your bare hands, weaving around Pokemon attacks and trying to land that capture. While the potential for this is here, generally this scenario unfortunately just plays out like this. Whether you're throwing a Pokeball or throwing something to stun, the most effective strategy is locking on and throwing something with ZR. Pokemon in general are too docile even when they're hostile, and it's far too easy to just stun or capture them. The game has further mechanics that affect captures, such as various food items. Each food item has a speciality for luring certain types of Pokemon, some of them even having favourites listed in their Pokédex entries. Researching Pokemon is one of the main themes of the game, so you'd think something like this would have a more prominent role. Being tasked with finding out which food each Pokemon likes would naturally be something to log in the Pokédex, but the game fills it out automatically for you, and it's not a requirement anywhere else in the game either. Catching and stunning Pokemon are so easy to do, I completely forgot that luring Pokemon was even an option and barely threw any food in my 50 hours of play. There are also alpha Pokemon that are tougher and usually found at much higher levels. These Pokemon typically can't be stealthed or even stunned, meaning a battle is practically guaranteed. These two gameplay styles of on the field and battles do not mesh well together, as they both negate any risks either style has. If you're struggling on the field and getting your butt handed to you, just throw a Pokemon to enter a completely separated experience. All your Pokemon are too weak and they all faint? Just return to the field, who cares? You can do what you like. In previous games, if you encountered a strong Pokemon, you might find that running isn't an option, and you're even penalised for attempting to do so. But in Legends Arceus, the Pokemon AI is too slow and basic, and simply running away will reset any disadvantageous position back to a neutral one. There is one slight caveat to battles, however, where if you leave, the target Pokemon is fully healed. This makes sense from the perspective of the battling being its own entity. Being able to remove yourself from the battle to freely heal your own team before then returning to an already beat down Pokemon would trivialise any form of challenge. It would have made more sense if the damage remained consistent between the battling and the on the field styles of play, so that both styles of play influence each other. Whittling a Pokemon's health down in the battle phase in order to make the on the field phase of dodging attacks and catching Pokemon easier would have been a better merging of the two styles, rather than being largely separate. Both mechanics should have been required to catch a Pokemon. Subsequently, within battles, the player can actually still move around, but the only use this has is for physically running away from the fight. Any attacks that hit the player character during a battle do not constitute damage to the player on the field. It would make for a more interesting fight if during a battle the Pokemon would still sometimes target me and keep me on my toes while I try to strategize and think about how to next instruct my Pokemon. Aside from a few exceptions, what's outlined in the tutorial is what you'll be doing for the better part of the 17-hour story. After having some freedom to catch Pokemon and after a few more tutorial windows, you've shown enough competence to be invited to tackle your first major threat, a frenzied noble Pokemon, Kleavor. Noble Pokemon are heralded as some kind of sacred protector, and as such, the characters do not permit you to capture them. So these interactions are strictly combat based, fighting for your life. Rather than throwing Pokeballs, you're throwing food balls. The intention is not to capture, but to quell the rage, so the player is expected to throw food balls to reduce the rage meter whilst simultaneously dodging the Pokemon's attacks. It's somewhat similar to Monster Hunter, where the basic loop is waiting for an opening, getting a few hits in, and then dodging attacks until the next opening. This is the basic structure, but the way it's delivered is vastly different. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, you're contained within a circular bubble with no escape, and for no discernible reason, your ability to sprint is gone. So you move close to the Pokemon to throw food bombs and then dodge when it telegraphs attacks. This dodge has plenty of invulnerability, making you transcend through literally anything. You generally don't have to worry about several hazards at once, you can just wait for the single attack they'll use and dodge practically whenever. Once the Noble is tired out, it'll be momentarily exhausted, giving you a window to throw more food bombs or throw a Pokemon into battle. Despite showing the typical signs of being a boss fight in a game, these battles show that these Noble Pokemon aren't really anything special, and this Kleavor is just the same as many other Kleavor. Defeating it with moderate ease, as you're practically in a 6v1 scenario, will stun them, giving you a much larger window to throw food bombs. And herein lies the major problem with these interactions. After so many attacks, the Noble Pokemon makes itself open to a Pokemon battle and easy to target for food bombs. Since the battle portion is so easy, it makes the on the field part negligible. Looking for openings between attacks whilst dodging them and attempting to aim and throw food bombs is a far more dynamic and interesting interaction, but there's no incentive in doing so when it's much safer to just wait for the battle. It's a risk that can be easily avoided because there's a much safer alternative. There's no time limit or any limit on how many food bombs you can have, so the only reason to throw bombs in the midst of an attack is to save your own time in real life. I mean, obviously I got places to be, I can't be sitting around playing a kid's game. The game's identity seems incredibly confused and can't decide which style it wants to be. It's holding on to the safe style of the mainline predecessors, so it struggles to fully commit to its own unique style. The on-the-field phase is similar to Monster Hunter, where you're fighting monsters that have their own unique attacks and behaviours, but the main difference lies in that for Pokemon Arceus, that is not the core focus. Monster Hunter is centred around this aspect of gameplay. It has far more movement options, different ways to attack the monster, different weapons that have different playstyles and strengths. Attacking certain parts of the monster will yield different results. There are more ways to interact with the environment and the items around you. The monsters themselves have a variety of attacks and behaviours. There are much more ways to strategize and approach each fight. And to top it off, there's a time limit to force the player to keep going with quick decision making. It's a lot more involved with a lot more depth, and that's what makes it satisfying and addictive. Comparatively, in this aspect of gameplay, Legends Arceus is overly simplified and still ultimately comes down to a traditional Pokemon battle. You can still lock on, so aiming isn't even a concern either. As a result, the Noble Pokemon fights don't pose much of a challenge, with the exception of the third Noble fight against Arcanine. In this fight, your movement is limited by pits of lava. The terrain is reduced to a plus shape, quite literally, as there are invisible walls to prevent you from going anywhere near the lava. Game Freak's always looking out for me in times of danger. Arcanine does the usual charging attacks you've already seen from the previous two Noble fights, but for his signature attack, Arcanine prepares 5 fiery balls of fire. If you do what you were already doing anyway and throw a food bomb, this will destroy them before he has a chance to do anything, and causes a stun so that you can send in a Pokemon. This is the one instance where throwing food bombs in the on-the-field phase actually presents an incentive. Halfway through the battle, Arcanine puts a temporary flame wheel in the centre of the stage, and then starts to charge his balls. After dealing with some finicky controls brought on by the lock-on system, I found myself close to blacking out. He seemed too far away to throw food bombs, and naturally I didn't want to go into the fire because I assumed that would just cause pain. Since the dodge is impervious to everything, I figured I was meant to roll across the lava so I could get closer, but oh no, the invisible walls. This is so jarring when Arcanine can just move across them freely and I just can't. So, whatever, I thought I'd wait it out and take my chances on dodging whatever Arcanine dared to throw at me. Oh. The game very helpfully throws up a tutorial window telling me that this particular attack is unavoidable. Great. So in this particular scenario, I guess I just didn't really have any other option except attempting to tank a hit in the fire and use the post damage and vulnerability to cheese it to the other side. This is a good demonstration of the lack of movement options, especially when invisible walls are concerned, and that this was the only instance in a noble fight that caused me an issue. As a side note, when failing the fight, I was prompted with the option to quit, retry the fight, or continue the fight. If you choose to continue the fight, the noble Pokemon will retain the damage it's received, subsequently forfeiting any kind of punishment for failing the fight. I understand it's meant to make the game more accessible, but it loses any semblance of a self-contained, well-structured challenge if there are no repercussions for my mistakes. After Arcanine, however, the noble fights do get a little bit more interesting. Against Electrode, you're constantly being chased by electric balls, and against Avalugg, you're locked to a confined space and aren't in a position to throw food bombs easily. It sort of turns into a bullet hell game where you're just trying to dodge everything being thrown at you, and it's actually a lot more engaging and fun. But then, that's it. There are 2 more fights in this style, but Avalugg is the last noble Pokemon of the story. It's a bit of a letdown because there's clearly potential here for something more, and they do serve as a nice progressive climax as defeating one is a requirement for accessing the next area. The other requirement is attaining a certain team member rank in the Galaxy team. Each Pokemon has a research page in the Pokédex with various different tasks. They're all monotonously basic, requiring you to do a specific action with a Pokemon, such as using a specific move or catching a certain amount of them. Once you reach enough milestones, that Pokemon will have a research level of 10 and you'll earn points towards going up to another rank. On the surface, this seems like a smart design choice by Game Freak, as this means that there is worth in interacting with Pokemon you've already caught. But most of these tasks are boring, repetitive chores. Going into a battle to spam the same move 20 times with a Pokemon you don't care about just to buff up your rank requires absolutely no thought or skill from the player and is just tedious. It's a nice idea, but the individual elements aren't fun enough to be repetitive in this way. As you progress through each of the 5 maps, you're given some tidbits about the story. Aside from your mysterious origins and the associated rifts causing noble Pokemon to frenzy, we have Arida and Adaman, who show up throughout the game. They are the respective leaders of the Pearl Clan and Diamond Clan. See what they did there? These 2 begrudgingly get along despite their humorously different beliefs in what powers the god of Hisui possesses, essentially representing Dialga and Palkia. Since this causes friction between them, the Galaxy team acts as an intermediary, being the big Papa clan everyone respects. These are the 2 that request your skills to tame the noble Pokemon, and as the story progresses, there's clear character development as the 2 put aside their differences for the sake of the greater good. From the get-go, you're basically heralded as someone with incredible skill, able to solve any problem or issue, and helping out with the noble Pokemon only cements this further. Despite this, a lot of the main cast still seek to test your abilities via Pokemon battles, because I guess they gotta add trainer battles somewhere? Forced battles happen throughout the story, and they're all so easy that they pose more of an inconvenience. I mentioned at the start about playing this from the mindset of someone who is unfamiliar with Pokemon, but even then, one of the skills that new players always had to learn, much like some of the recent games in the mainline series, Legends Arceus tells you from the get-go which moves are super effective or not effective against any Pokemon. Any kind of mystery or wonder about what typing an unknown Pokemon has, and learning for yourself what would be most effective, is completely nullified by the blatant hand-holding. Legends Arceus unfortunately takes more influence from the mainline series in that the majority of trainers you battle have 3 Pokemon or less, half the amount that you can have in a team. Wait, why can there only be 6 Pokemon in a team anyway? When was this rule established? Why are we still abiding by this rule in an era seemingly absent of legislation regarding Pokemon? From a gameplay perspective, I understand why the limitation is there, but is the specific number of 6 really just a remnant from the original games 25 years ago? But anyway, the trainers are sorely lacking, as has been the case for the majority of modern Pokemon games, which is a real shame because they've actually changed the battle system a lot. A lot of the extraneous battle mechanics that have accumulated throughout the generations have mostly been stripped away. It's more reminiscent of the first generation simplicity, which is an understandable measure given the overhaul of the system. It's still turn-based, but more of a traditional RPG in that each party takes independent turns, rather than turns incorporating actions from both sides. The turn order is calculated by the difference in speed between the two Pokemon, and the faster your Pokemon is compared to the other accentuates the rate at which you can have multiple turns in a row. Every move can also be used in two different styles, Agile and Strong. Agile will make the move faster, meaning you have more of an opportunity for a follow-up turn, but at the cost of the move being weaker. Strong style, on the other hand, makes the move more powerful, but at the cost of making the move slower, which may lead to the loss of your next turn. Both of these two styles also cost 2 PP instead of 1. What's interesting is that the turn order still all revolves around the foundation of the speed difference. Agile and Strong aren't as clear-cut as 2 moves in a row or strong move now, miss a turn later. What the game doesn't tell you is that each move independently has its own speed value, which further changes the outcome of the turn order. Some moves are so quick you can basically use them for free without even using Agile style and without spending a turn. Stat buffs can no longer be stacked up to 6 times like in the mainline games, only being used once, and are also temporary. Some status afflictions have slightly different properties now and also only last for 3 turns. The battle system is dramatically different from what we're used to in an interesting way, and yet Legends Arceus still squanders its potential like the mainline series. Any strategies or complex sequences just do not matter when the AI are so weak and don't even make use of them themselves. Whenever you win a battle or catch a Pokemon, all Pokemon who haven't fainted gain XP. With virtually no grinding on my part, every trainer battle was still mind-numbingly easy, making me long to go back to the exploring part of the game. As much as I enjoyed the new battle system, there are some nuances missing from the old style that I fear may oversimplify the gameplay. In traditional Pokemon, both parties make their moves at the same time within a turn. This gave some depth in terms of reading your opponent and trying to figure out what they may do that turn. Predicting your opponent to use a certain move and switching out to a Pokemon that is a more favourable matchup has always been a core component to the game's strategy. But now that turns are independent to each individual, there aren't really any predictions. If you're worried about being hit by a ground type move, you can switch to a flying type, but now your opponent is free to make a choice based on your switch rather than you switching to your opponent's surprise. As such, Pokemon can't always lean on another Pokemon for support as easily, and it may lead to battles that are more like ticking off the boxes quickly than switching out and playing mind games. There's still a good variety of Pokemon with varying stats and move pools that this may not be an issue. At the time of writing, Legends Arceus has only been out for a week, so most of this is just speculation on my part based on the limited battles during the single player campaign, since Legends Arceus doesn't have online battling. In terms of an online experience, Legends Arceus still allows players to trade Pokemon, which is the main staple of Pokemon's concept. Though something about this seems a little off this time around. Legends Arceus has much more of a single player vibe to it. You're a lost kid fighting for your life in a dangerous, unknown world. Your only task from God himself is to seek out all of the Pokemon. For a game that's based more around exploration, the game shouldn't be so focused on the reward, being the Pokemon you find, but rather the journey. Finding and capturing all of the unique Pokemon is the front and centre goal of the story, more so than any other Pokemon game before it. There's no version exclusives this time around either, so every Pokemon is available to the player. Being able to have someone trade Pokemon with you to obtain Pokemon that you haven't found yet seems counterintuitive. In Generation 4, Diamond and Pearl introduced the GTS to trade with people online around the globe. But with this service, it wouldn't let you trade for Pokemon you hadn't encountered yourself. I feel like this implementation would have made more sense for Legends Arceus as well. Players could always choose to limit themselves and not use the service, but it shouldn't be the case that using this feature defeats the point of the game. Whenever you black out on the field, you wake up at the base camp having been rescued and missing some items. These missing items take the form of a missing satchel on the overworld and can be seen on the map by every other player in the world. Should someone find your missing satchel, you can accept your items back and give them thanks, which gives them MP. It somewhat negates the punishment for blacking out in the overworld and subsequently reduces the fear factor in fights, as you know someone out there is going to pick it up for you anyway. However, it does feel pretty good to help out another player to get their items back. The MP you get can then be used as currency to buy rare evolutionary items, which are otherwise only found within the space-time distortions. Wait, what did I just say? Yes, a space-time distortion. After exploring the fields for a while, a space-time distortion may appear, or rather may start appearing. The first time I came across one was early in the game. It was pretty apparent that it had nothing to do with the story, at least not what was happening at the time. Yet given the looming narrative of the rifts, it certainly piqued my curiosity. You enter with a bright flash of light, the surrounding area now covered in an ominous shadow. The Pokemon wandering around you look the same as always. Everything looks the same except the colour of the land. Confused, I left and continued with the story. When it happened a second time, I thought there must be something to this. Maybe I had to return with some kind of item. Maybe it was a plot point later on in the story. But no, as I was wondering what it could be, the space-time distortion appeared. Random Pokemon I hadn't seen before in this area started popping up, highly leveled and all on the aggression. Having weak Pokemon at the same time, and not yet knowing I could stun them with ease, I retreated pretty quickly. But it provided a much needed sense of excitement and gave me hope that there may be more treacherous encounters later on. Whilst that wasn't the case, it at least gave me a taste. I mentioned previously how Pokemon are too docile and too easy to approach, but this is mostly because every Pokemon in the overworld is essentially a one-on-one interaction. In space-time distortions, you're being attacked by multiple Pokemon, so catching your target isn't so simple. This is what Legends Arceus sorely needed more of. Interactions that combine various elements of the gameplay to make it actually interesting. Having to be wary of a variety of attacks being thrown at you, dodging and weaving around them, all while trying to focus and catch that one Pokemon you need. It's also a clever way to introduce more Pokemon into the game that otherwise might not fit into the region. In fact, some Pokemon are only attainable via these space-time distortions, which makes them a lot more tantalizing, but unfortunately this is a problem itself. Space-time distortions appear randomly, seemingly only after an extraneous amount of time has passed in the overworld. While there is technically plenty to do in the game, exploring, catching new Pokemon, filling out their Pokédex entries, I still never came across that many space-time distortions. It's been speculated, and seemingly true from my experience, that space-time distortions will appear more frequently if you don't go around playing the game. Not only do you have to wait for a space-time distortion to start appearing, which typically takes around 15 minutes, you then have to wait another 5 minutes for it to actually appear. Why? This is such an arbitrary time waste. Just have the space-time distortion appear right away and skip the appearing phase. And to top it off, exclusive Pokemon seem only to appear in certain maps, and even then, it's random. Random encounters have always been a prominent staple in the Pokemon games, to establish rarity and demand amongst players, but it needs to stop. In these instances, randomness doesn't add anything to the gameplay. If you're unlucky, it only serves to waste your time and pad out the game's length. It's like if I gave you a task and said, this task is complete when I flip a coin and it lands on heads, and I'm going to do that for 10 coins. You're not doing anything, you're just waiting for me to flip those coins. Legends Arceus does have its fair share of enjoyable rare Pokemon though, in that they only spawn in specific areas. Turtwig is a great example of this, where they only spawn in a little walled off crevice of the map, over a tranquil pool. With the majority of Pokemon being easily caught in the same way, Turtwig stands out because the journey it takes to obtain it is marginally different. It's a nice reward for going out of your way to explore different parts of the map. In a lot of cases, Pokemon are just strewn about all over a bare, empty map, ripe for the plucking. You'd think with the wide variety of Pokemon, they'd diversify them a little more than just the scenery that they walk around in. The scenery is pretty lacking, and there aren't many meaningful things to interact with. There are various amenities across the map that give you useful resources when struck with a Pokemon. Sometimes there's a blockade of rocks in your path, preventing exploration. When I first saw these rocks early on in the game, I assumed I'd need some kind of bigger or more rockful Pokemon to take them down, and went to explore elsewhere. Later on, when I found them again, I just threw a Pokemon out of curiosity, and sure enough, every Pokemon could break these rocks down. Which begs the question as to why they're in there in the first place. They're just a roadblock that you always have the tool to break from the very beginning of the game. This is a minor criticism, but it's just such a weird inclusion that makes me wish that they had included more roadblocks that actually relied on having specific Pokemon. One of my favourite Pokemon spin-offs is Pokemon Ranger, which has such roadblocks. They require specific Pokemon to break through them, and at face value they come across as nothing more than a nuisance. But what they actually do is challenge the player with finding the specific Pokemon they need, and then fighting that Pokemon in a unique, interesting and fun battle. Pokemon Ranger has you spinning circles around Pokemon whilst avoiding attacks with fast-paced action. It's not about taking down the roadblocks, it's the journey of how you achieved it. If Legends Arceus was going to have every Pokemon be so easily caught, all in the exact same way, more thought should have been put into how you catch them, or at least how you find them. But that's not to say that Legends Arceus doesn't get a few things right. Catching Pokemon is still fun, albeit shallow, and being able to do multiple actions concurrently feels good and means the player doesn't have to continuously wait around for animations to play out. I can chuck a ball at something as I see it, and continue to explore or travel to my next destination. The game very clearly indicates when you've caught something too, so you really don't have to wait around. Waiting for the ball to shake in the traditional Pokemon fashion isn't the suspense it used to be. When I get no notification that I've caught the Pokemon, indicating that I failed, I've typically already travelled far from the scene. More often than not, I don't care to go back because I know how easy it is to find it and try again later. The time it takes for the ball to shake typically takes longer than the time it took to catch it, and my current objective is far more interesting to care whether it succeeds or not. You may have noticed from my exploring thus far that I've been riding on various Pokemon. In a game about catching Pokemon, these Pokemon are befriended to you for free as part of the story. As you can only call upon them for travel purposes, they don't count as caught in your Pokedex. They don't even count as having been seen. I guess the player character just really doesn't want to look at them.
Hey, I can't see!
You have a Wire-Deer for running around quickly and galloping up hills. Ursaluna can sniff around for items and is helpful in some optional side quests. Basculegion lets you travel in water, which is helpful since the player character can't swim. Sneasler lets you climb cliffs, and finally Hisuian Bravery can fly. You will be using these guys for most of the playthrough since they're so much quicker for traversing the map, so be sure to learn their names properly. You can switch between them very easily. In some cases the game does it for you automatically, and the movement feels great. The only downside is that you can't throw anything while riding them. More often than not, you'll find something of interest, hop off your mount, tap that ZR button, and then hop back on and continue. It just seems so pointless. 5 years ago we had horseback riding in Breath of the Wild, firing arrows with ease. Wait, I think we even had that in Twilight Princess, which is like 50 years old. The only exception is Basculegion, I guess because catching Pokemon in the sea would be too difficult otherwise. But for whatever reason, they totally botched the aiming. I'm not touching the control stick here, it just skews the ball massively to the left of where I'm actually locking onto. You can also throw balls whilst jumping in true Breath of the Wild air shot slow-mo fashion, but unlike Breath of the Wild, you'll land in the sea before the Pokeball hits the Pokemon, making them angry with the splash and making them impervious to Pokeballs. A weird thing I noticed with Wire-Deer and Basculegion is that whenever you do their dash, it tries to force the camera behind you at a slight angle. After the camera moves, you can freely move the camera around again as normal while dashing, but this happens every time you press B to dash. In an exploration-oriented game, being able to move the camera around freely as you move the character is imperative. Having to wrestle with the camera every time you dash is incredibly frustrating. Similarly, you can climb up walls with Sneasler, but every time you reach the peak to stand on, it shunts the camera down toward the floor. It feels like you're getting whiplash every time, it's so bizarre. The rideable Mon are still amazing for traversing the map quickly and safely though. They're very useful in a particular side quest, Eerie Apparitions in the Night, where you're tasked to find purple wisps throughout the land. These wisps provide an observational challenge to each map, rewarding you for exploring and taking in all of the sights. They're a little bit like the Korok seeds from Breath of the Wild, though without a puzzle attached to each one. Thankfully, there's only 107 of them too, which is a cute nod to the Sinnoh Pokedex number of Spirit Bomb, who is your reward for finding them all. As you can see, the draw distance is pretty far, so you can comfortably see glowing wisps in the distance, making them a fun distraction to the game. This is only during the night, however. During the day, you'll only see them when you're right on top of them, which makes sense with the theme of the side quest. There's also another side quest in finding all 28 letters of the unknown. These Pokemon are similarly dotted around, but are much harder to find since they're just tiny eyeballs that don't glow. They each have a locational hint written in unknown font and make exploring that little bit more fun, though the unknown are completely optional, not even considered by the game as a side quest, and don't contribute to your goal of Arceus. There's one more side quest that I want to talk about because... oh, they done duped me good on this one. If you haven't done the side quest I'm about to talk about, I want you to listen anyway because it's actually disgusting. The Sea's Legend. To start this quest, you find it on a chalkboard which sort of acts as a hub for some side quests. The request is from the professor, who eagerly tells you about it. He saw a strange Pokemon at Prelude Beach, which swam away in the direction of Cobalt Coastlands, one of the maps that you can travel to. The Cobalt Coastlands expert, Iscan, drops by to say that's not much to go on and that he can't provide any further information, except that Cobalt Coastlands used to be called the East Sea. And he's right, this is virtually nothing to go on. It's incredibly vague. I went to Cobalt Coastlands and scrambled my brain over the reasoning behind East Sea. I combed the entire map for several hours to find nothing. I hate to use any sort of a guide or hints for games, but I was so frustrated that I caved, and I'm glad I did, because here is where you need to go. Do you see it? No? Because the answer lies in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, games which I do not own. It's a nice idea, but there's no indication of that anywhere in the game. It's not even a post-game quest, it was accessible before the final map of the game, and it's the only way to access two of the Pokemon in the game, Phione and Manaphy. Thankfully, they had the sense to not make these two a requirement of the Seek Out All the Pokemon task. As a gamer, graphics generally don't have much impact on the enjoyment of my experience. As long as it's presented in a way that doesn't offend my eyes, it's fine. Pokemon Legends Arceus is the first game ever to make me think, wow, this game looks bad. The art style is fine, the general models look fine, and even these pixelated PS2 looking textures look fine. But there's something about the aliasing. Is it just me, or do these edges look harsh and blurry at the same time? It legit messes with my eyes and makes me uncomfortable. I've never had this with a game before. See this? Beautiful. This looks fine. This ain't got a problem with this. But this, the game looks unstable, like all of its graphical elements are about to fall apart any moment. It's so horrible to look at. No joke, I thought it was a problem with my capture card and rejigged all of the HDMI cables. But no, this is just how the game looks. Game Freak for a while now have been notorious for poor graphics and optimization. But this is just astonishing. And you know, sure, every open world game has its graphical mishaps here and there, but when you have literal PowerPoint presentations scooching along in the background, that's when you need to call the Dev Protective Services, because something ain't right at Game Freak. Aside from Wisps, side quests are generally uneventful. They'll give you quest markers and send you on a tour, or villagers will ask you to bring them a certain type of Pokemon or some common items, and that's about it. Sometimes you'll be tasked with finding a specific Pokemon based on a vague description. These aren't too bad as an observational task, but when you're generally going around catching everything around you anyway, it's not unexpected to just already have them to hand. Strangely, before noble fights, the NPCs often talk about collecting the ingredients required to make the noble Pokemon's favourite food. But seconds later, another NPC will just walk in and say they already got them for you. If it wasn't going to set up a fetch quest, maybe as a way to push players into exploring other segments of the map, then why mention it at all? The story is riddled with moments like this and ridiculous amounts of arbitrary text boxes. The game also has a bad habit of fading to black whenever some kind of action is happening during a cutscene as a way of not having to animate it. Basically, if anything goes beyond a character model walking, it fades to black. It's a great way of sucking you straight out of the moment. This was the case in Sword and Shield too, so it's become an unfortunate staple of the series. The characters are likeable enough, and the general world and atmosphere makes you want to explore and research Pokemon to help the village that's welcomed you in. But there are just way too many cutscenes. The game stops and starts so many times, ending cutscenes with "you need to go and talk to such and such person," only for you to walk 5 feet and sit through another cutscene with an exorbitant amount of text. Right here, I've been tasked with exploring the new area, and although I can reach these cliffs and go around to the character the game wants me to talk to as part of the story, the game actively blocks me from doing so with an invisible bubble and won't let me explore until I've done the super important battle, which, again, is redundant when it's 6 Pokemon versus 2, even in a 2v1 setup. In the final map of the game, Alabaster Icelands, you're tasked with climbing some ice which Sneasler can't climb, so you have to meet with Sabi, who's friends with a Bravery. As typically what happens in this game, she turns up during the cutscene anyway. She's a child, so rather than joining the rest of the party, demands you to go and meet with her on top of this incline like it's some sort of game. You jump up in 2 seconds with Wire and then she runs away and demands you chase her. The quest marker points you to the top of the mountain that's practically back at the start of the map. She then says the same thing again, and this time she's waiting high up at Snowpoint Temple, which is right on the edge of the map, the complete opposite side of where you just were. You could argue that the first chase was a way of forcing the player to explore the map a little more, but it literally covers the same ground it took to get there in the first place. Completely pointless moments like this are riddled throughout the story. Once you make it to Snowpoint Temple, it almost looks like the beginning of a Zelda dungeon. Sounds like one too. You can't ride on Pokemon here since the temple counts as something special, I guess, which is a shame because the temple looks pretty big, so you gotta trudge around on those slow legs of yours to explore this empty temple. It's here that we find the first puzzle of the story in the final map of the game. The riddle essentially suggests to start from the first Reggie statue in the room and follow its gaze to the next statue until you reach the door. That's the order of the buttons that you need to push in order to continue. You do this for 3 floors, with each one requiring more memorization, or more notepad paper to write it down on. You do you. And for the duration of the puzzle, there's literally nothing else happening. No Pokemon to fight, no secrets to uncover, just you and an empty temple. After the puzzle, you're at least rewarded with an Alpha Gallade, but you can just walk past it and catch it later. It was really weird to suddenly be given this puzzle late in the game, but it was a nice change of pace, and I wish there had been more puzzles like this throughout the game. Toward the end of the game, you meet Ingo, someone who also came to this world via space-time rift like yourself. Through his character, we get a little more insight into your origins. Longtime fans of the series may recognise the character from the Generation 5 games, Black and White, and from the foggy memories he has. It would appear he was taken back in time from those games. Using Ingo as a way to project what may have happened to you is interesting in and of itself, but it also adds gravity to the issue in that what happened to you is now happening to others too. It leaves a lot to the imagination as to why this is happening to select individuals, and presumably wondering who exactly is orchestrating this activity. As interesting and compelling as all of this is, it's rarely touched upon throughout the 17-hour campaign, and in the climax takes a back seat to cover some definitely more important clan drama. After celebrating your victory and quelling the final noble's rage, a loud Bakoom roars throughout the village. Stepping outside reveals the sky has turned red, which I guess is a sign of imminent danger. Commander Kamado, leader of the Galaxy team, has no choice but to link your existence with the red sky and all the issues you've solved since you arrived. Without proof of innocence, you must be guilty. This reasoning is naturally flawed, as Arida and Adamant point out, but it's not outrageous to think your presence may be the cause for all the problems in the world. When time travel is concerned and the fabric of space is literally tearing apart, who knows what the scriptwriters are going to come up with? Kamado apologetically kicks you out of the village, while hoping you'll be able to resolve the red sky and clear your name. The prospect of not having a safe base to return to, one that's practically your home at this point, and having to fend for yourself out in the wild, is always a fun twist, even when you've already learned just how easy it is to survive in the Pokemon world. When all hope seems lost, it's at this point that Volo becomes a prominent figure. Have I not talked about Volo yet? Well, he's a travelling merchant who pops up several times throughout the game to drop some tidbits on the lore of the land and help you with a few tasks. He is suspiciously coherent and laid back, and helps you out once again in this desperate time. Volo takes you to the perfect hideaway, which is inhabited by Kogita, a mysterious person who knows a lot about the myths and legends of Hisui. How convenient. She instructs you to obtain the red chain and bind the broken world back together, which requires confronting the legendary Pokemon of the 3 lakes. Your god phone magically beeps to inform you it's put quest markers on all of the lakes. Thank you, god phone. Thank you, god phone. And away you go! At this point, travelling the world is incredibly quick and easy, so you can make it to the lakes no problem. Where Volo is waiting to give you another cutscene that you don't need. Your god phone opens the entrance to the cave at the amazement of your cohorts, and you enter to find an alpha Pokemon. And another cutscene. After dealing with the alpha Pokemon, you get more drivel from the supporting characters before the legendary Pokemon finally shows itself to give you a challenge. This format is the same for every lake, cutscenes and all. Mesprit is the emotion Pokemon, so their challenge is asking you questions about your journey so far. Not on your understanding of the plot, not on any kind of trivia, they're asking you about how you feel. After you've answered the questions with whatever you felt, Mesprit deems you honest and grants you the first part of the red chain. Wow. So there's another cutscene and you're asked if you want to go back to Kogita's hideout. Wanting to fast travel to a place where I could then fast travel to the next map, I said yes, I'd like to see what the game thinks of our progress. Another cutscene. Azelf is the willpower Pokemon and tasks you with hitting them with a food bomb. Should have tasked you with having the willpower to sit through more of these cutscenes. It becomes pretty evident that hitting Azelf is an impossible endeavour, as whenever you let go of the button to throw, Azelf teleports somewhere else. After a while, Azelf will ask you if you want to give up. It's a nice idea, but it comes across rather foolish when they didn't even try to make the task look possible. If a task is truly impossible, no sane person would keep trying. But of course, that's what the game wants, so I guess I'll continue. This exchange happens another 2 times with Azelf, asking more aggressively. On your 4th attempt, you lock onto Azelf, throw the food bomb, and you're done. We're 0 for 2 on the lake challenges. Lastly, Uxie is the knowledge Pokemon, so their challenge is to answer a question based on how many eyes a selection of Pokemon has. Finally, something of merit, because it actually relies on your knowledge of Pokemon found during the journey. It's like something you'd hear at a pub quiz. I generally dub this challenge as the second and final puzzle of the story. And with that, you head to some shrines or something, more cutscenes play out, the red chain is formed, and now you have a plan to deal with the red sky. So you head back to the village like nothing even happened and let everyone know what you've been up to. I'd just like to add that this all happens within about half an hour. You get kicked out of the village, then half an hour later you come back without anyone even trying to stop you, with some red chain that supposedly solves all the problems. Kinda loses the initial touch of tragedy, but whatever, let's go save the world I guess. You arrive at Mount Coronet to find Komodo trying to deal with the crisis himself. In one final bid to stop you, he challenges you to a Pokemon battle. As he's only got 4 Pokemon, you literally just bully him into apologising and accepting your superiority. Some stuff goes down, red chain contains Dialga's power, you catch them, Palkia drops, and because the red chain is bust, Palkia's apparently too powerful to take on. So you have a literal god loose on top of the mountain capable of all kinds of destruction. And the commander ushers everyone out because it's too dangerous. Back at the camp, everyone's noses turn brown as they apologise and praise your brilliance over and over, losing all sense of urgency. The new plan is to find some ore to bind the red chain back together, and luckily there's a quest marker to show you exactly where to find it. It's a shame because I actually found this cave earlier as I was exploring the map. It's tucked away inside a cliff, meaning it's not obvious to see while surveying the land on your bird. It would have been a unique exploration challenge, and perhaps it wasn't fitting in what's meant to be an urgent time, but the characters gave up any semblance of urgency already. Thankfully for us, Palkia just sits atop Mountain Coronet like the good little deity it is. So you find the ore and then a group of bandits shows up to give you another pointless battle. These bandits show up a few times throughout the story, but nothing they do actually has any impact, which is why I hadn't mentioned them until now. You get the ore, the professor makes you a Master Ball, or a red chain ball, and you go fight Palkia. Needless to say, aside from the weird sense of non-urgent urgency, this whole part feels epic, and it all concludes with a final boss fight against Palkia in a similar style to the Noble fights. However, Palkia never gets tired and never has an opportunity for a Pokemon battle, so it's all on you and your ability to get those food bomb shots in. Perfect. It's a shame there's only one fight like this in the game, but it's great to see what we could get in the future. So you save the day, the sky returns to normal, and you have a celebratory festival. Well, you don't, the characters do off screen. I guess it wasn't in the budget. The credits roll here, but you're not really much farther along in your quest with Arceus. Still so many questions left unanswered on who you are, where you come from, and why you were chosen. So it's time to take a deep dive into more lore. For the post-game, yet mid-story, Volo tasks you with finding all of the type plates as a potential way to summon an almighty god. Cogita once again has a hand in conveniently knowing this lore and graciously bestows that wisdom upon you. It's too bad someone uncovered all of these mysteries before us. To find the plates, you must confront several legendary Pokemon. Most of these encounters are the same as any other Pokemon, just throw a Pokeball or stun and catch. But then there's Heatran. Heatran is one of the few interesting encounters in the game because it acts a little like a noble fight, but in the regular game. It surrounds itself with a fiery dome, preventing you from trying to catch it or trying to challenge it to a Pokemon battle. Heatran darts around the arena and shoots up lava plumes as you attempt to throw mud balls to lower its guard. Granted, it still only requires a few mud balls to stun, but it was a fun experience while it lasted. Having a protective dome to prevent you from getting too close and subsequently making it more difficult to aim, while also providing attacks that were actually a threat, meant the game actually had some depth. If more Pokemon behaved like Heatran, it would have made a much more compelling start for this new style. Once you've caught or defeated these legendaries, you'll have obtained all of the plates, except one. As it turns out, Volo was the big baddie all along, and has the final plate. Through his quest for knowledge, he became convinced that Arceus was a real deity, and wanted to meet it in the hopes that he could acquire its power and create a new world. Devising a plan, Volo sought out another legendary Pokemon, Giratina, to create the rifts, trying to pull out Arceus from whatever plane of existence he resides in. As a result, strange events happened in the world, including your arrival. There's not too much of an explanation as to why Giratina worked alongside Volo, other than supposedly Giratina conveniently doesn't like Arceus, and Volo fed him power? Yeah, okay. But the plan fails, and instead Volo seeks out the plates, which are said to be fragments of Arceus. It's a bit loose, but it's a pretty grand twist and satisfyingly wraps up the main plot. You then battle Volo for the plates in what's probably the most difficult battle of any Pokemon game. When I reached this point, I was significantly underleveled, but even with sufficient grinding, Volo actually has a diverse team, all completely different types, with a lot of type coverage in their move pools. On top of that, once the battle is over, Giratina shows up to assist Volo, without any break in between. You can't catch Giratina in the battle as it acts as an ally to Volo, and you have to fight both its altered and origin forms. This essentially makes the fight an unprecedented 6 versus 8, for once not in the player's favour, and with the new battle system which favours aggression, it makes for an intense battle. This is the only worthwhile trainer battle in the game, and it makes for a fitting end to the story. Once Volo is defeated, he concedes the final plate, and your flute for summoning Pokemon turns into the Azure flute for summoning Arceus. However, the catch of seek out all of the Pokemon is still at play. After this momentous occasion, you unlock 4 more legendaries to find. Cogita teaches you of the fan-dubbed Genie Quartet and tasks you with catching them and bringing their research levels up to 10. Like Heatran, they pose an interesting challenge. They run away from you and are much faster than you. The only way to catch them is when they attack you with a flurry of randomly placed whirlwinds. It takes a little time to figure out the pattern, but once you figure out a way to push through, you can consistently throw a mud ball at them. Doing this 3 times lowers their guard to send a Pokemon into battle, which is the favourable option this time, as if you fail to catch them, they'll run away again. Each genie acts the same, so what works for one works for all. However, the environment for each one is different. Landorus is the most basic, on regular land with not much to get in your way. Thundurus is only accessible at sea, meaning you've got to attempt the same but with different movement and throwing mechanics a la Basculegion. Tornadus is surrounded by lots of hostile Pokemon, including alphas, meaning that you've got to be very wary of all the incoming attacks while trying to do your biz. Finally, Enamoras is surrounded by mud pools which slows your movement, although Wyadeer practically negates that, so never mind. Thundurus and Tornadus also only appear under certain weather conditions and will magically disappear if those weather conditions change, essentially locking you within a time limit. While the randomness of the weather is a pain, all in all, the blending of on-the-field and in-battle mechanics, along with the environmental pressure, is an absolute tease of what Pokemon Legends Arceus could have been, combining all of these elements for an immersive, challenging experience with depth. But they chose only to do this for a select few legendaries. After the Genie Quartet quest, you're just left to gather the rest of the Pokemon by yourself. Unfortunately, the task of seek out all Pokemon does not mean to see all Pokemon. It means you actually have to catch them all. To be honest, this isn't too much of a setback, they're pretty much one and the same. After 47 hours, I finally had every last damn creature in my balls. Pokeballs. And could finally call upon Arceus. A staircase takes you up into space, into the heavens. And now Arceus will finally give us all the answers we've been looking for. Oh my god. Whoa! To my pleasant surprise, Arceus is the final boss of the game, and what a boss it makes. Challenging, fun, not a Pokemon battle in sight. Arceus has the ability to change into each of the 18 different Pokemon types and changes a few times during the fight, but he only has 5 attacks. My only criticism here is that I wish there was more of it, which wouldn't be a criticism at all if it wasn't for how sparse interesting interactions are in Legends Arceus. The battle lasts for a good while because it will not stop doing this ring pulse attack thing, and then Arceus finally accepts you. As far as explanations are concerned, there isn't one. Arceus just picked you because, I don't know, Ingo's wearing a funny coat. It's weird to see God literally have hope in you, like he had no idea what he was doing when he picked you. I guess it's fine, the story doesn't really matter too much, and they at least made some effort to make it coherent. They probably figured the majority of players wouldn't make it this far, and with that, Arceus gives you a piece of himself, essentially meaning you've caught him too. This is a nice touch because you never throw a Pokeball at him, and it would be silly for a literal god to be in the hands of a 15-year-old. A good way to sum up Legends Arceus would be potential. It has a solid foundation with some fun mechanics, but they didn't make much of a game out of it. Imagine having entire ecosystems that have unscripted and dynamic interactions between different sorts of Pokemon. Seeing Pokemon hunt each other and using the different environments of the world to their advantage. Tackling issues that need to be solved using specific moves from specific Pokemon and having it all happen in real time. That would have been incredible, and I hope this is where the series is going. As it stands, everything in this game feels very artificial and most things in the overworld feel very disconnected from one another. Overall, Pokemon Legends Arceus feels like it's drawing so much from so many different games and then completely misses the point as to why they're fun and enjoyable. A vast world that looks like Breath of the Wild, but is completely devoid of the fun movement and meaningful things to explore. A real-time combat system like Monster Hunter that is only applied to a handful of Pokemon, which are all incredibly basic. A traditional turn-based RPG battle system, ironically like Pokemon, but without the plethora of mechanics and depth it's built up over the past 25 years. It's as if they took parts of all of these games, added them into a soup pot and just filled it with 90% water, then ladled a small portion out to you and said, here you go, but then poured it into an IV bag that slowly drips it out to you over 17 hours. Like, just let me eat my damn meal. Pokemon Legends Arceus is a much needed breath of fresh air, followed by an exacerbated sigh. It captures the addictive gameplay we love so much from the mainline series and presents it in a more modern and dynamic approach. The game definitely has its fun moments, but it continually falls short in many regards. Many of the improvements are noticeably hollow, reducing the repetitive elements of the game to that of a chore. It's a promising direction for Game Freak, and one that already exceeds the stale formula of the mainline series. It is my hope that the new styles and themes of Pokemon Legends Arceus becomes the new standard for the franchise, so its potential can be fully realised. And that's all we've got for this one. Let us know what you think in the comments. 3 Frame Startup is a collaborative effort between the 3 of us, and we appreciate a like against the video and you hitting that subscribe button. Until next time, thanks for watching.